everyone. Welcome to another segment of Topics with Tara. Thank you guys so much for watching. And the purpose of these videos is to, one, educate everybody on topics related to mental health and therapy, and two, to remind everybody that we're all going through things, that seeking therapy is healthy, and that we're all a little crazy sometimes, and sometimes we just need people to be able to relate to our craziness. I just want to point out too, if you want to visit my website, it is www.lighthousetherapy.net, and the psychology group that I'm a part of is a bunch of therapists and psychologists. It's a really, really great team of people. Their website is www.thepsychologygroup.com. All right, so let's get into it. Today we're going to talk about dysfunctional families. This is one of my all-time favorite topics to talk about. I could probably talk about it all day. I used to run a 2-hour group on dysfunctional families, well, on family systems, when I worked at the treatment center. So I absolutely love this topic. I will make this video as brief as I possibly can, but I could probably go on for 2 hours and run a group on it. So when people think of dysfunctional families, they may envision a household where everyone's screaming all the time, maybe one parent is absent, or maybe there's some type of abuse within the family. So that's absolutely dysfunctional, understandable, very, very dysfunctional. Well, I'm here to tell you that every family is a little bit dysfunctional at some point. Yes, even yours. Even the family who you look at and you think they are completely perfect, they might be a little bit dysfunctional as well. So we've all probably fallen into one or all of the dysfunctional family roles at some point in our life. The difference between a family who may seek therapy versus a family who doesn't is the intensity of that dysfunction and the level of stress or pain that the dysfunction may be causing. That's really important. It's the intensity of that dysfunction and the level of pain or stress that the dysfunction is causing within the family. Hey, Drew. So in an attempt to individualize ourselves from our families, we find roles within our families, okay? And there's 4 major roles. If we have a strong internal locus of control, meaning that we will take responsibility for our actions, we're comfortable sharing the role with another family member. Now, if we have a strong external locus of control, meaning that we will blame other people for our actions and have an inability to take responsibility for our actions, then we compete for a role within our family. So if we have a strong internal locus of control, we don't compete for a role. If we have a strong external locus of control, we compete for a role in the family. So this can happen on a subconscious level or on a conscious level. Usually it happens on an unconscious level, and it's something that we aren't aware of until we kind of bring it to the surface and talk about it a little bit more. So throughout your life, you may find yourself falling into one role throughout your life, as the family changes and the dynamic in the family changes, you'll realize that your role starts to change, and I'll explain more about that later. All right, so the 4 major roles are the family hero, the responsible child, the acting out child or the scapegoat, the caretaker, or the lost child. So I'm going to show you here. Let me see what you guys are looking at. Okay, so I have this chart here, and I should have had little note cards for it. So this is the role of the responsible child or the family hero. Okay, this is somebody who is responsible. They're the breadwinner. They get straight A's. They're the sports stars, the athletes, the prom queen. As an adult, they're very rigid or controlling. They're a very type A personality. This is the person in the family who is 14 going on 40. They're also more the parentified child, which means that as a child, they kind of take on the responsibilities as a parent would. So maybe they make up for doing dinner or helping their younger siblings with their homework because maybe mom or dad are absent. This is the person who, as an adult, has a very difficult time accepting that there's anything wrong within themselves. So this is the person who the parents also look to prove that they are good parents and that they did good, and they kind of give the family self-worth. So that's the responsible child or the family hero. The next one is the acting out child or the scapegoat. This is the person who acts out the tension within the home that the family ignores. So maybe there's a lot of fighting and arguing within the home. This is the child who goes to school and then starts hitting other kids because they don't know how to deal with the emotions that are going on in the house. So they go to school and they act out the tension that the family ignores. This child gets attention by acting out, typically because this is the only way that they know how to get attention, which is typically negatively. They're the troublemaker. This is typically the person who gets into some type of substance abuse or is pregnant as a teenager. This person is also highly enabled. Okay, the family places blame on this person. The family may feel ashamed of this person, and this is the most emotionally honest person in the family, but may have trouble expressing it or is very sensitive. Okay, so those are some traits. These aren't all the traits of these roles, just the main ones. The next one is the caretaker. Okay, the caretaker is the placater of the family, is the peacemaker, very codependent and typically an enabler. They have trouble setting and keeping boundaries. They also take responsibility for the emotional well-being within the family. They typically have trouble getting their own needs met, but they meet the needs of other people. They get taken advantage of. They might be a pushover. Hey, Mike, how are you? They want to be liked by everyone, and they typically avoid confrontation. So that's the caretaker. The last role is the lost child. The lost child is somebody who is typically invisible, very introverted. They might be the person in the family while everyone is downstairs eating dinner or they're having a big get together. This is the child who goes upstairs and plays video games by themselves. They have low self-esteem. They typically deal with reality by attempting to escape from it. They have relationship phobia to avoid getting hurt. And actually a lot of actors and comedians are lost children who hide behind their characters as a way of expressing their feelings. So those are the roles within the family. And I'm going to get back to that a little bit later. So as a child, you may have found yourself in one or more roles throughout your life. For example, as a child, you may have been the family hero, someone who's really responsible. Everybody praises you for all the good that you've been doing. And maybe you have a younger sibling, and as the younger sibling starts doing better in life and starts kind of outshining you, you might find a different role within your family in order to individualize yourself. So you might kind of start being the scapegoat or maybe the lost child. It's important to remember that we adapt to the role that is most closely related to our personality. So we can start to meld so much into these roles that we kind of lose our identity and create a false sense of self, which can be very dysfunctional. However, there's always some truth to some of these roles. For example, if you're a caretaker and that's your role, and you're a nurse or you go into the helping profession, it's not just to satisfy your role of being codependent and wanting to help people. It really genuinely is because you care about people and want to help them, not just because you're codependent. All right, so let's go to a question that was submitted anonymously. How can someone how can someone become influential in a dysfunctional family? I feel like I have a dysfunctional family, but I don't feel like I'm taken seriously whenever I have suggestions and often feel dismissed. How does one create function in a dysfunctional family? This is a great question. I love this question. It's something that I get asked a lot. It's also a very loaded question because it requires a lot of moving parts and really getting into what's going on in the family, but I want to explain a little bit about how these roles benefit from each other, and how by these roles benefiting from each other, we can actually keep each other sick in a family in order to maintain our role. All right, so here I have, hey Gary, how are you? So I have this chart here of all these different roles, and I have these lines, okay, here in the middle. So if we look at this, we see that the responsible child benefits from the lost child, and the caretaker benefits from the scapegoat. Okay, so the reason for this is that the caretaker needs the scapegoat to be sick because then they continue to enable them. Inversely, the scapegoat needs the caretaker to be sick because if the caretaker stays sick, the scapegoat can continue to do what they're doing. Now, if the responsible child wants the lost child to be sick, okay, and stay in that role, then they can continue to outshine the lost child and vice versa. Now, that doesn't mean that the caretaker doesn't want the responsible child to be sick, because the responsible child could be an alcoholic father who is in denial about his drinking. And because he's in denial about his drinking, he thinks he's the family hero because he's making all the money. He's the breadwinner of the family. But the caretaker still would want to enable the alcoholic father, okay, and be the caretaker to the alcoholic father. So it's really important to know that all these roles kind of meld with each other, but the roles benefit from each other in the sense that they want each other to stay sick, okay? Now, the question of how do you restore function in a dysfunctional family? So it's important to know that it takes one person in the family to change the family dynamic, okay? What do I mean by that? If we take, hypothetically, let's look at a situation where we have a family who the mother is very codependent and enables the rest of the family. Maybe the dad is an alcoholic. Hey, Christina. Maybe the dad is an alcoholic but in denial about it, but is a workaholic. And then we have another child who is an addict who is the scapegoat, okay? So the scapegoat in this situation would be the identified patient, okay? This is the person in the family that everyone kind of looks at and says, if you were different, if you got better, we would all be better, okay? So they point the finger at one person in the family and identify that person as the one who needs help. So in this scenario, we can say that the scapegoat, okay, is the identified patient, okay? So let's say the scapegoat gets removed. Okay, the scapegoat goes to treatment and the scapegoat finally starts getting better. Okay, what happens now is that the other three roles within the family don't have the scapegoat to blame anything on anymore, because the scapegoat is out of the house, the scapegoat is doing things to get better. So the rest of the family starts to say, oh my God, we have to start doing something different now. I don't have anybody to enable. I don't have anybody to blame. So then they start looking at their own behaviors and their own actions and how they can do something different. So if you're struggling in your family to create function, look at yourself and what behaviors you can start doing to change. Relationships and families are like a dance. I compare them to a dance a lot, okay? Imagine you're waltzing with somebody and one person falls out of line or kind of trips and steps out of line. The other person is gonna kind of trip out of line to catch up with them. And that's what happens with families. So for example, imagine you come home every single day and you're upset because your significant other never gives you a kiss when you walk in the door, okay? In order to change that behavior, start with yourself. When you walk in the house, give your significant other a kiss, all right? Change it up a little bit, and that becomes your new normal. Start creating a new pattern of behavior. You have a few choices to make as well. You can either continue to try and get blood from a rock and feel anxious and defeated within the process, or you can change your behaviors and your responses to your family and continue to work on yourself if your family is not willing to go into some type of family therapy. So it really starts with you if you want to change the family dynamic. When there is dysfunction in the family, some members become void of emotion because they feel like they've been jaded from all the abuse and suffering. So people within the families start to lack empathy. They don't have the capacity to understand other people's pain, right? If you're really jaded to something and somebody tries to come and tell you something, you're probably not going to be very responsive to it because you're lacking the empathy to understand what they're going through. So the important thing to remember when dealing with members of a family in this type of structure is to refrain from face-to-face confrontation. More than likely, due to the level of emotional turmoil and resentment that's going on in the family members may not take the responsibility for their actions, leaving you feeling defeated. Okay, so your attitude towards them needs to remain neutral as to not give them any power. Now, if you're dealing with a controlling or tyrant type of family behavior, it's important to communicate your intentions and plans with compassion. So this way the controlling person feels safe and hopefully their controlling behaviors lessen. So if you're dealing with a very controlling mother, for example, okay, who wants to kind of micromanage everything, it's important for you to explain to that person what your intentions are and what your actions are going to be so they feel safe in that relationship and within that family dynamic, okay? So remember, the dysfunction in the family is related to the intensity of that dysfunction and the stress that it causes within the family unit. There are also different levels of family, dysfunctional families, like different levels of intensity within the family dynamic, but that's a topic for a different day. The best plan of action in dealing with an emotionally dishonest, abusive, dysfunctional family is to seek therapy, to begin to unpack all the history of the family dynamics and the process of some of the emotions that may have caused some of the tension. So if your family won't attend together, then at least you can learn how to navigate the intense emotions that may be present within your family. All right. So hopefully you guys enjoyed watching. I hope you guys learned something from this. Tune in next week to another segment. If you guys have any questions about dysfunctional families, I gave a very, very brief overview of dysfunctional families and the way that our families relate to each other and the way that we fall into different roles within dysfunctional families. I love talking about this topic, so if you guys have any questions, please, please, please message me, email me, inbox me, whatever you need to do. Also, check out my website again, www.lighthousetherapy.net, as well as my psychology group's website that I'm a part of their practice, www.thepsychologygroup.com. Remember, we're all little nuts. We all have things going on. It's okay to talk about it. I want you guys to know that going to therapy is completely normal, and I hope you guys have a good rest of your night. All right, I will talk to you guys later. See ya.